What's up, guys? We are going to start looking at the proportions of a face to get ready for our charcoal portrait. So I want to start off and just say there's a lot of different ways that we can actually do system of faces. There's a lot of different inherent proportions. Some systems are a lot more accurate. Some systems are a lot more complex. We are just going to teach kind of the very, very basic one. And this is probably the most simple, not always the most accurate, but it'll do for what we're trying to get. So before I get into what to do, I want to show you a few problems that students have when they begin faces. So step one, they kind of start with, we're going to start with the head, but what a lot of students end up doing is they draw the eyes way up high, and so they draw them too high, and they also draw the eyes way too big. And so what you get is this kind of alien looking face here. And you know, if we look at, let's just get rid of that. Okay, but if we look at his face, I'm not sure who this is, but I just have a bunch of printed celebrities. So let's look at his face. If we look at that, we notice that his eye line is pretty much right in the middle of his face, okay, going from his chin to that. So the first thing that we're going to do is in your sketchbooks, step one is we're just going to kind of draw kind of I like to describe the head as kind of an upside down egg or something like that, so we can kind of just get this idea, and we can kind of go in and change the proportions. Like he's got a pretty square jaw, so I'd probably have to change those, but for now just an upside down egg. And let's off to the side kind of get our kind of a measurement here. So I'm going to do that, okay? And so we know that if this is the length of the head or the height of the head, we know that the eyes are going to be placed about right in the middle. So we're going to label this eyes. And what we're going to do is we're just going to create kind of a line that will kind of represent that eye line. Okay, so we want to do that first. Okay. Next, we're going to look at the distance from the eye line to the chin line. So let's look at that distance next. From eyes to chin. And the nose is going to be placed about halfway in there. So the nose is about halfway between the eyes, and let's label this the chin. Okay. So, and then finally, and we can see that if we look at this. And when we're talking about the nose, we're not talking about the tip of the nose, we're talking about the base of the nose. The base of the nose is going to sit about halfway between the eyes and the chin. And this will depend on if this will change if the person's looking up or down. These proportions only work if the person's looking right at us. And then finally, we'll take the distance from the nose to the chin, and we'll break that in half. We'll break that in half and go ever so slightly higher. It's a little bit higher than halfway, but that's where the mouth is going to be. Okay, the mouth is going to be, and so actually let me put in the nose line and the mouth line. Okay, So we've got a couple other things. You can pause the video if you need to, but put your finger on the top of your ear and run your finger across your face. I know we're not supposed to be touching our faces, but maybe just wash your hands before you do this. So run your finger, and you'll notice that your finger should probably run into your brow ridge or something like that, because the top of the ear corresponds to about our eyes. So we're going to kind of make a line off to the side here, and then the bottom of our ear, you can do the same thing with put your finger on your lobe, bring it across, should correspond to about the bottom of the nose, there. So we have our ears that are sitting off of our face, okay? And so I'm gonna give him a little bit more of a jaw, okay? The other thing that we can find out, if you put and measure the distance from your eyes down to your lips, so you can kind of put your finger measurements on your face like this, measure that distance and keep that distance and move it up. That is about where your hairline is, okay? Depending on how old you are, if your hairline is receding or not. So that's kind of the point at which our hair goes out. In fact, our hair, we want to think of it as kind of a volume, and so we're going to kind of get, it's going to build off of the head a little bit, and so the hair is going to be here. It's growing out of the forehead, and so we'll kind of group that or whatever. We'll kind of erase that in there. But we want to kind of group the hair in masses. We'll talk about how to draw hair later, but just know that the hair has volume. It is essentially a 3D form, so we want to get those forms in. Okay, let's look at some other proportions of the face. Okay, specifically the width. Okay, typically we use the eye as a measurement of width, and we say that the face is 5 eyes wide. And so what we're going to do is kind of comes in here, and you kind of got to estimate, but we're going to make some ellipses where we can kind of fit 5 of them. So maybe that's too small in the middle. So I'm going to do about 5 equally spaced ellipses on that eye line. We don't want him to look like an alien, but basically we can erase those middle ones and the ones on the side, and we're not going to draw the eyes as ellipses, but that kind of helps us to at least place them. The eyes are going to be about 1 eye's width apart. So again, you can kind of measure your eye width with your finger and kind of see that matches up. Okay. And we'll talk about how to draw eyes in, but the sides of the nose, okay, if we extend those up, should correspond closely, not always, different people have different proportions, but should correspond to about the tear duct of our eyes. So we can kind of pull that straight down, and that kind of gives us the width of the nose, okay? As far as the pupil is concerned, the middle part of the eye, if we take that straight down, that corresponds to roughly the outer edge of the mouth. So whoever this guy is, his mouth is not exactly the same width, but a lot of times, so you can kind of go from the middle of the eye down. that'll correspond to the corners of the mouth. And so that tells you kind of how wide to make the mouth. Okay. And so we'll go over each of these proportions and how to draw them in future videos. But this is about the proportions of the face.